Peace, everybody. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Disrupt the Chaos. This is a special one. We usually have the show Wednesdays at 7, but my guest could do today, and I'm really grateful to have her on. There's so much going on with the Diddy trial. And before I introduce my guest, I just want to remind everybody that this is the commemoration of the Nakba of 77. And the BDS movement today put out a call for civil disobedience, which is probably happening in all parts of the country right now. Don't believe they're not happening all around the country, because that's why you need to look at independent media. There's more coverage of protests in Al Jazeera than our own, the big companies, the big media. For almost 20 years, the BDS movement has been leading the call for strategic and impactful grassroots solidarity with the Palestinian struggle for justice, freedom, and equality. Since the start of Israel's live stream genocide against our people in Gaza, BDS pressures to end international complicity in its regime of settler colonial apartheid and illegal occupation. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, I don't even know if we're. I know I have to see the pictures. I know I'm a journalist. There's a documentarian on with us, Yoruba, and I get it. I just don't think people are aware now where this is heading, because starvation, right, is real, and now it's kicking in, and it's been horrific to see what the IDF has done with support from the United States of America these last 18 months. But when you start to see young people being emaciated and their bones, and you're seeing mothers, maybe we'll make them drink the water and they'll try to put something in it that cleans it. You're seeing adults, mostly women, with their children who are starving to death, eating seeds, like seeds, SEEDS. So this country has to take it up to a whole nother level, and it can't just be all of our students. I mean, I really wish, and I'm not saying I'm not seeing it, but I wish there was so much more support for the students on all of these campuses. Because I don't know how this is happening in academia. But what we do know is that people are rising up and will continue to rise. Yesterday, Ben Cohen, the founder of Ben and Jerry's, interrupted, got arrested. And I think we're just got to see that more. On the flip side, what we're not seeing are the immigration raids. Like, they'll tell us how many people, but we're not seeing full footage from any mainstream media resource, right? And that's why it's important to follow organizations like Abaji, that it has people on the ground. I mean, I just saw this 3-minute clip that what organization put up? Oh, Black Men Build put on. Philip Agnew, who co-created Dream Defenders, found that Black Man Build, and they put 7 scenes of these people. Like, I didn't even know they ran up in a club at night and arrested people as they were running out. I was like, this is not, crazy is not the right word. What I think it is right now is I'm scared. Like, I'm not scared to fight. I'm just saying I'm scared. Like, we better understand what's happening right now, especially with the Supreme Court. Yo, fam, there's a lot, but you can all be part of something. So follow an organization. If you're an artist, make art. If you're a writer, try to write from a different perspective. If you work with young people and you can give them a safe space where they're not going to be, threatened or harassed and all of that. Because at the end of the day, the truth always comes out. But it shouldn't be on the back of what could be hundreds and thousands of Palestinian people completely annihilated, and those that survive being put into a more apartheid-like state. All right. So, like I said, today I'm so happy to have Yoruba Richen, incredible documentary maker. She wins awards for all of them. I've known Yoruba for over 25 years and just so impressed at your body of work and the diversity in it of Black people in general. But look, that documentary that Yoruba and her people put out, The Fall of Diddy, came out in January 2025. So the first question I want to ask you, Yoruba, is we were talking before January 2025, on March 2024, when I met you up at Lincoln Center. But you had reached out maybe like a month ago and said, would you want to be down? I said, absolutely. But then we leave March, we leave that event, and then like 3 weeks later, it's here. And I know what you're like, we're about to finish this documentary. And the reason I really like the documentary as well, first, it's 5 episodes. The fifth episode was taped right after you probably were in edit with the assistant,
Yeah.
just as I thought. And then 1 and 4. Look, it also shows the complicity of people, that kind of network, what that meant, but also the real fear that people had that he was going to have them killed. And that also, what I found about most of all the women that you interviewed, Yoruba, was all the women say, did I allow this to happen? I did notice the men more told what happened, but not that they confronted it. So I see you in March, and then what? Like, he's indicted, and you're finishing up the doc. So what was that process like? Maybe we'll work backwards, because I know y'all were perfect timing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Rosa, for having me. And before I answer that question, I just have to
Right.
respond to some, what you were talking about in terms of the occupation and Israel and what we're seeing. We also have to recognize that today or this week was the first refugees, who they're calling refugees, Afrikaners
Mhm.
from South Africa, who've been given refugee status in this country. So my first film was about land reform in South Africa and how
Right.
Black people were working to get their land back that was stolen from them by the white apartheid government. And they're still in a situation in South Africa where whites own most of the land, have most of the economic power, and they are being called refugees, and they're being discriminated against because of the efforts of the Black South African government, the multiracial South African government, to
Mhm.
rectify years of brutal racist apartheid policies. And I think what we're seeing is not only a racist administration that is not allowing any other refugees, even the Afghan refugees who are our allies or the United States allies in the war, but prioritizing these white, giving refugee status to these white farmers who are, who were the architects and were the apartheid government, the Afrikaners. And what we're seeing is, with South Africa being the leader of
Mhm.
bringing Israel's to international court and criticizing Israel for its actions, being the leader of it, that
Mhm.
this is also part of that payback that the U.S. government, that the Trump administration is trying to do for South Africa. So what we're seeing is a convergence of apartheid, apartheid policy, real estate takeover, as he said he wants to take over Gaza, and racism, good old U.S. racism. So I just have to say that before
No, I'm
we,
glad you said
yes.
that, because I think maybe a lot of younger people don't even know like there was apartheid in South Africa for decades, and that these folks, like you said, still own the land. I do know when I was part of Third World Within, we went to the UN conference on world racism and xenophobia, and that was 24 years ago. And even then, they were like, "Yo, they still have the land, they still have
Yep.
the jobs," you know, and it was like
The economic
right.
power.
Yeah, they still have, and to this day have the economic power. But I'm glad you linked it to South Africa being the first, because I
Yeah.
didn't like when you break it down. I was like, oh wow, I didn't think of that connection. Right, absolutely.
Absolutely. And then another part of it too, and then we can get to Diddy, is that which people do not know, is that Israel and apartheid South Africa were allies. Okay, they were allies. South Israel is the Israeli government supported for many years the racist apartheid South African government.
Yeah, I mean, while
So
the Cubans were sending weapons and doctors, like Fidel was like, "That's our fight too."
exactly. They supported. So there's a long history of South Africa. And, there's a reason why South Africa is the leader of bringing, the one of the global leaders of bringing the case against Israel, because they have a long history with the country. So,
Thank you for
um,
dropping that knowledge. Absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. So,
So you're
as you
editing,
said,
you're editing, and then what?
yes. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like I do have
I'll
to
start from
start
the
back, but
beginning.
you're right, that that 5th episode with Phil, the assistant, came in, uh, as we started talking to Phil as we were editing the last, as we were finishing up basically. And then Phil, we got connected with Phil and did a mad dash of incorporating his experience in that interview for an additional episode. And I do just want to give a shout out to my team, because this was such a team effort.
Yeah.
My co-director, Emma Schwartz, Maxine Productions, which is led by Mary Robertson, our network partner, Discovery, I'm sorry, ID. So it was an incredible team effort. And that's how we were able to do this so quickly and to
Yeah.
really be able to follow how this was unfolding, as you mentioned. I will say that the team started in uh, basically before the Cassie lawsuit was filed. So the team at Maxine had been starting to, follow and dig into some of these allegations. And that was, the Cassie lawsuit came out in November. So that was, before November of 2024. And uh, so that was the beginning. And then when the Cassie lawsuit came out, uh, everything accelerated. Obviously, I came to start. I started working as a director on the project after the head of Maxine, Mary Robertson, reached out to me. I knew Mary because when she was running the New York Times Presents television series, we made a film together about Breonna Taylor. So
Oh yeah, that's
she
great. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. She reached out to me and to see if I was interested in being a part of in leading this team. And I knew that it was going to be, because I knew Mary's work and Maxine's work. I met the co-director, Emma Schwartz. I knew that this was going to be a journalistically sound a series that had integrity, that really wanted to feature the voices of people who had been silenced, and who felt, that they could not speak their truth. And then we also wanted to understand how we got to this place, how Sean Combs became the man that he became, in terms of his influence, in terms of his moguldom. So we dug deep And also, highlighted these incidents, looked back at these incidents that were key moments in his career, um, as well, and revisited those, like the Stampede at City College, where 9 people died.
I know, but nobody
9 people.
ever puts
It
that in a
was
hip hop timeline. I'm like, did you not
Yeah,
know? Like,
yes.
yeah, people
I mean,
died.
so many people, and I remember that. I
I
remember I was in Yeah, we were, we remember that, and going back and digging into that, looking at that archive footage, I didn't realize how many people died and were injured. It
yeah,
was, and then yet still, and he was, held he and Heavy D were held a certain amount responsible, but uh, his career continued to skyrocket and to rise. The club shooting in '99. That was another place where he was involved in in this shooting, that resulted in Natasha uh, getting shot in the eye, and is still traumatized to this day.
yeah.
And
Let me back
he,
up. Just let me back
yeah,
up a little. So for the
sure,
first person that Yoruba was speaking to is an assistant, very young. I'm assuming he's still here. He looks very young. That he worked with Puffy for 3 years, and he basically was like, all of this happened because I was supplying. He's telling me what to buy, and he's showing his text messages just like chloroform and like NyQuil PM, and I'm like, yo, all he was doing, and then ketamine and all these drugs. He would be like, yo, get me this. But you can tell how I didn't think he was afraid. I think he's like still in shock from
yeah, he
everything.
is. He is. And, the testimony that we're hearing from Cassie about the freak offs, when Phil was there, they were called Wild King Nights, is basically, what Phil told us, and that was Phil's experience with him was much later, or was a few years later. So it's, we're hearing this testimony. Cassie's obviously testifying this week. And she's, testified to what those freak offs, quote unquote, were like. And Phil was, part of supplying and the cleanup.
Yeah, and he also was. It seems to me from what he's saying that he, no, not what he's saying. He says that he was forced to have intercourse with somebody, and he was like,
Yes.
I'm after this, I'm out. And he was, and then he also was one of the first people to give testimony to the prosecution as they were building. So that was one. And then the second point is the event and the sister that Yoruba is talking about is in the early 90s at City College. Puff Daddy and Heavy D, they knew each other from Mount Vernon, New York, and I was the exact same age. So in Mount Vernon, we knew who they were, like from like
Yeah.
going to a club there or in New Rochelle, like a more teen club back in the day. But so they put it on. It was packed. It was over capacity. Was it that something happened and then everybody ran, but they were jammed up because they had closed the doors, the exit doors. They had locked the exit,
Yeah.
and 9 people died. And one of the people who was a victim was this sister, and she said to this day, she's never been physically all right, but obviously the trauma. And then lastly, see, what I like about the first episode is it talks about his parents. His dad was a number runner. Everybody, like people who've been around that, like they knew who he was. And his mom, if not to spoil it, but if you watch the first episode, she's the type of mom like, yo, dude, if you go out there and you don't fight back, like at 8, 9, 10, 11, she would be like, you have to fight them back. And then, so they were also living in what's considered the suburbs, Westchester County. So I like that
Yeah.
that was like began because one of the other of his people said something like he was raised like this, but never his mom was like, don't be that dude, and use other kind of
Yeah.
language.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, we were very, I believe it's a second episode, but point taken. At least when we go dive deeper into his growing up with
yeah,
his mom. And it was very uh very important for us to have Tim, the childhood friend who he grew up with in Mount Vernon, be able to give us some insight
yeah.
into what that relationship was about, and we're very appreciative that Tim agreed to be interviewed. I will say that going back to Phil, and I was just at an event with Phil, a screening, and he talked about, and we found this with so many of our participants, that for them, the telling of the story and being able um, to finally unload about what happened to them was an act of healing for them, and was a healing part of their healing process. And so we are, again, it's so courageous for these folks to come forward, and we're so thankful that they did, and that um tried to create as much of a safe space, quite frankly, for them to be able to share these harrowing things that they allege happened to them.
How did you get them? Was it like a long process? Did they maybe trust you more, seeing your work, knew that you were Black? Like, did those things come into play?
Yeah, they definitely came into play. I mean, all kinds of things. Um, you know, my co-director, Emma, had started on the case before I came on. So she had already started many, relationships with people who eventually we, interviewed. But when I came on as well, we were really on all cylinders, talking to people. And then, of course, people tell you, oh, you need to speak to this person, you need to speak to that person. And so you follow, the train of and that's how it works. Now, what was really interesting is, because these events unfolded, so first the raid,
Yeah,
then the horrific video, then the apology, then of course the rest. As these events unfolded, more people uh, came to want to participate. I think it was the horror of seeing these things.
yeah.
Also, there's a feeling of safety in numbers. So it was definitely unfolding in terms of who we were able to interview as these events unfolded. We were able to secure more interviews.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like all of them that are speaking for the first time are, like, probably still in the motions of, like, I told my story, and we don't when someone tells a story, their story, we don't know what happens when they go home to their family or their kids, like, the things that they gotta negotiate, maybe if you have children, I mean, this is real, and I could feel like they were all, like, getting it, and you know that all of them have their own process to healing. If that ever happens, like the sisters, that's the chef, you could tell, one of the brothers, you could tell, and then what they said is she came back, and that we know why she came back, but maybe we know until
Yeah,
this day people will say, why didn't she just leave? And I'm like,
of
I was,
course.
you have
Yeah,
no understanding of like trauma or whatever. Everybody says I would leave.
yeah,
Everybody says they would leave until that happens. And I know enough people have
yeah.
that experience, including me, where it's like, I should have known better. And I'm not talking about anything
Mhm.
99.9 of this. All I'm saying is having an experience where you're like, I'm not supposed to be with this person. And then you go
Right.
back. And I know I've
I
read
mean,
things that say it takes an average of 7 times that women have to leave before they
yeah,
leave
I
for good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
before they permanently leave. Yeah, I mean, domestic violence is, endemic in this society. It's not just Diddy. And uh, sexual assault is endemic in this society. And that's true. You always hear, well, why don't they just leave? She was with, him for, this amount of years, on and off, but, as we know, that it's not only trauma, it's fear too,
Oh my God, yeah.
as well, so it's
I
deep.
mean, what he was already doing, I'm like, in that it makes sense that things are still coming out. He was doing this for over 25 years. This was not like a blimp
Right, that the
in his
allegations go back
in his thing.
25 years, yes.
Yeah, you know? When you were, when you saw the tape, how did you feel watching it? Were we all in shock, or was it more like, "Man, I heard this, but I never seen it, but we
Mm.
heard about it," especially
Oh, no, it was shocking. I think it was shocking for anybody. I mean, that's some of the most shocking tape I've ever seen,
Yeah,
of just
yeah.
um, the brutality, I've never seen anything like that in real life, you know what I mean? You see the stuff in the movies of, you know, but nothing like that in real life. It was shocking and it was horrific and it was devastating.
Yeah, now they released the entire footage now, which is 16 minutes, and
Oh
it
my
shows
god.
the security guard. He comes up right away.
Yes.
Yeah, when
Yeah, it
Cat
was
they just released it, or I'm sorry, they showed the full to the
in
to
the jury.
yesterday in the trial, yeah. And
Yeah.
then so she gets on the phone and the guy relatively comes up really quick. But by then he's
Mm,
already on all the glass and stuff. So you hear them
mhm.
like he's like in front of Cassie, he's conversing with Puffy, like, dude, what's going like you're like he's about I don't know the words, but he was like, concerned. And
Yeah.
then there's a 4-minute like window where Puffy's just like sitting there walking back and forth. And then the security guard comes up now because I guess he started fighting with her again. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, okay. So the security knew, which means the hotel knew, which makes sense why Puffy found out and was like, let me go give you all this money. I mean, it's not like there's any ethics involved in this. I mean, any one of these beatings could have killed her. That's the other thing. She's so small, like, and
right.
to take this for a decade, you know,
Yeah.
I been reading all this stuff, so I should have said from the beginning, trigger warning. I did put that out because there's some parts where, first, the fact that she's doing it at 9 months pregnant shows her strength. But they were also saying some of the reporters were when she was testifying, it was almost like no emotion. It was like this is what happened, and then this
Right.
happened, and then that
Right.
happened, and like the timeline. I mean, it got so horrific with her that she even talked about having like mouth sores, you know, her hair was falling out. She said at one point she was always
Of
drugged up.
course.
That's what
Yeah.
she said at one point, all I wanted to be was drugged up to even get through this. So when you're making now that you're hearing the testimony, do you think there's another part that needs to be done, like the aftermath of what this means? And do you see
Well,
like, this is, I guess, the hip hop reckoning, the Me Too reckoning in hip hop, but we've known this. But I'm like, why did it take so long for this? And then obviously so much debate around is he hip hop or not? I'm like, I don't care what he is. Like, he's a
yeah.
predator. And he has destroyed not one, two, including his own children, that one day are going to have to really contend with it. And it's heartbreaking in that
Yeah.
sense. But other people, this is their way of getting justice. I guess there's contradictions too, because we're talking about him going to jail for life. I'll take the contradiction. He should never be out.
Yeah. I think it's when making this series and diving deep into these allegations and to this lack of accountability that he's had for so
Mhm.
many years. I really think it's a truly American story, and it may even not just be American, but we see so many figures who have had allegations of sexual, assault, um, of lack of accountability, who continue to rise and rise and rise to the highest points of power. Right now, of course, there's different levels. There's different situations are different. Um, but this is not something that's just confined to him.
Right.
Harvey Weinstein is being retried right now as well. Um, we have, we have so many instances of this kind of behavior. Now, hip hop, of course, the world of hip hop is its own world. And I think part of, the part of there's a desire to protect our people. Sean Combs is one of the few Black billionaires that we have. He's somebody who was a culture shifter, and I think that makes it hard and makes it very sad for
Mhm.
folks. Danielle talks about that.
Yeah.
She was the editor of Vibe, and she talks about how heartbreaking it is that what's happening and these allegations and these experiences are coming to the fore, as she
And
was someone who was part of that whole,
yeah, she said
and hung out with him.
that's what she said. She said because her first work was putting him on the cover, and he was like, "I want to
That's
see the
right.
fruits," and she's like, "No, not journalistically." They go back and forth. Then he calls her one day, and he's like, "Yo, if you do this, I'm gonna put you in my trunk and kill you." She then
Yeah.
tells people and has to have security, but then she says too, "But then I went back. I stayed
Right.
going to
So it's
these
going
events."
back in a different way. Yes, absolutely. So it was going back in a different way. Yeah, I've continued to party with him. I continued to, have a friendly relationship with him. Absolutely. And
But
she's really reckoning.
what I still find interesting is I see the women taking accountability if they felt they were complicit. And I mean, sorry, y'all, it's men. Like, you're not gonna
You
find
said
it.
it, not me.
I'm gonna have to say it. Where are we gonna find this story among people who identify as women? Come on, y'all. You and to me, I think I've been struggling with it. I was struggling with it to a point, and then I said, all of us have done what we could do to try to stay in love with this culture, to try and we
Mm,
know it's bigger than Diddy, but it was not a lot of men, even the most hardcore, for the people, black, all of that, all got all at some level have even done something or been complicit if it's around them. I don't think that I'm not saying that women we shouldn't have been more stepped up, but like when these rumors were going around, I'm in hip hop. I don't really see him just as like a hip hop thing. So my go-to reaction was always like, no, it's not all the men. And then I'm like, no, I get it. It's not all the men, but it's not stopping the predators that then creates more predators. Most men do not rape, but ones that do, they have done it repeatedly until they get stopped. And it is what it is in terms of like why we know men, especially in the black community, so many women to this day will be like, I don't want to get the state involved. They have a relationship and understanding what we have know and witness about what specifically was impactful to black men. But the
right.
women always step up. And I've just been kind of like, where's that moment where the rest, particularly of the men in hip hop, or at least acknowledge what is happening, not to one person. He could have done it. It seems to me he did it what, to hundreds of people? Would that be hyperbolic to say hundreds? Probably.
Well, the allegations come from many, many people. I don't know if I can put a number on it, but they come from many, many people, employees, people that he was intimate with. So yeah, many, many people. Because as he said, it's over many decades. And can I just say one thing too
No, go
about
ahead.
the
Yeah,
women?
sure.
One of the things that our production company that we worked with, Maxine, was very, was very deliberate about, is for this production to be women led. She's a woman who, who created the production company, but also too that the team be women led, and that was important. That was important because of many different reasons, but also our perspective in around these issues. So I just wanted to add that.
No, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then now we're also seeing some of these cases be overturned now. Like, it's like the sister said in your thing, like it was popular. Now look what's happening again. We're seeing
Right.
retrials or whatever. Look, my thing on this, if he is convicted, I believe, I don't mean any of this with sarcasm. I believe that Trump would pardon him. Like, I really believe that. Why wouldn't he? I mean,
Well,
this would
stranger
be the
things have
one black
happened.
person Trump would like, right?
Yes. Stranger things have happened.
Right.
Afrikaners are being given refugee status
They
as
get a
persecuted minority in South Africa. So
they got more
I
land in South Africa than we do. Like, what is weird and
like,
crazy.
what is going on? Yes, we're living in an insane time.
Yeah. And I feel like this is definitely an extreme case that went on for decades. But when I also want especially men to realize, even if you're not this person, but the misogyny and the sexism is still abounds in all circles. I'm not talking everywhere in this country. And why wouldn't it get worse, maybe, or back to a place that we have tried to move from, or men who hopefully are growing up with a whole different way of how they look at women and what it means to treat a woman. We're also in a country that's taken away our reproductive rights. So I'm like,
Yeah, of course.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so
Totally. And we see backlash, on so
and
many different levels.
no, literally everything. I'm like, everything we do,
Yeah,
because it's not about DEI. That's about black and brown people. They just found a
of
nice way to
course.
say it.
Of course. And, the Me Too, Me Too as well, there's these moments where we feel like we make progress in terms of various things, and then we see a backlash
Yeah,
that happens. We've seen that historically in this country.
yeah. And I think Toronto was very brilliant, because that's what Me Too was about the survivors, that
Hmm.
she has also put in complete infrastructure in place that is scaling up, and creating the safe spaces, creating funds for women who have gone through things to go on retreats, to like the work that Tarana and her team are exactly speaking to what continues to happen, and including what's happening to women in Palestine. So like you had said, it's global. I mean, the patriarchy is real, and I
Yeah,
sometimes
patriarchy.
think it's real. So are you going to do a follow-up? Would you do a follow-up of this after whatever happened?
Well, we, are following the story, and seeing what is being revealed. I mean, a lot is being revealed already, and this is the first week. So, we are in our journalistic heads, continuing to follow these events, and we'll see, what that means.
She the stand today, she was questioned by the defense. So that's the prosecution, her testimony on that.
Yeah.
The judge is saying, at one point, the judge is saying that I don't know if it's a woman or a man, but it is
I think
saying
it's,
that it is a man.
I think so.
Yeah, it's saying that he's going to only allow the defense a little bit more because he's saying they just kind of repeating the same thing, like the same part
Mm,
of the testimony. And I mean, judges will be like, nah, like wrap it up. Like I know, and it's a tactic that they use for the jury. I mean, I
yeah.
look, I don't see how that jury doesn't convict. I know, like, I'm supposed to say whatever's the right thing to say. Again, the right thing to say is that even with all this, all those people impacted, their lives were altered, some of them irreparably, and like harm was done to so many people, and how those people might end up harming. It's a sick cycle, you know.
Yeah.
And I do still find it a little disappointing too that we still have, you know, brothers being like, she should have left. I would never
Yeah.
should.
Oh no, there's
I mean, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, and I'm blaming her. I mean, I
Yeah,
looked briefly at social media
I
response to
know.
some of this stuff, and I had to
No,
stop.
I
Yeah,
know. That's why I
yeah,
was like, no, and then I'm like, I know some of y'all. It's like y'all are so going to be who you are and who, you know, and I don't. I just feel I really feel for Cassie, like, especially being a mother, especially like her husband, um,
hmm
because in the testimony, yesterday, or it might have been on Tuesday. No, I think it was yesterday. She said she's with her husband. She's had 2 children already before she was pregnant.
yes,
And she
yeah,
said to him, I've done as much as I can done. I'm leaving. You take care of the kids. And she was going to walk out into traffic. And you like legit
I
had to
know. I
grab
get
her,
that.
like from walking onto
Yeah,
traffic to kill herself, you know?
yeah,
So when people talk
yeah,
about the
yeah.
money and all of this, like the money is the only, unfortunately, sometimes the only mechanism so that she could always have the help she needs, and her children, the people around her, her mom,
Exactly.
all of this. It's just it's horrible,
Not to
So
mention her career was sabotaged.
right,
I mean, her career was thrown under the bus.
yeah.
So yeah, it's that was heartbreaking. I read that too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you could talk about your sorry, the Superman, the documentary in North Carolina. What's the name of it? Am I wrong?
Yes, American Coup. American Coup.
Oh, was that?
Wilmington, 1898.
Oh, yeah. I want you to talk. Can you talk about that one? I'm gonna
Yeah,
watch it.
yeah, absolutely. I was actually making it kind of finishing. I was finishing up American Coup as we started. As I started the Diddy project. Very different film, but also very harrowing and devastating. It's about the Wilmington, North Carolina insurrection and coup of of 1898. Um, it's considered that the events that happened in Wilmington are considered the most successful insurrection, where a multiracial government, local government, was overthrown by white supremacists, self-identified white supremacists, in 1898. Wilmington was a very thriving majority Black city, port city. You had uh, Black landowners, businessmen who competed against whites in in business. You had a certain number of a degree of Blacks and whites living together or relatively harmoniously in the town, and it was kind of the sort of the dream of Reconstruction,
Mm,
and it also lasted when Reconstruction kind of was ending in the 1870s and so on. Wilmington was still this thriving community. Um, so what happened was uh, a local, and it was actually statewide as well. It was a statewide movement, but the white populace who were the and the Black Republicans. Blacks were Republican at that time, Party of Lincoln. The white populists and the Black Republicans created an alliance in that challenged the Democrat. The Democrats were the elite, the businessmen, the Democratic elite, and they created what they called a fusionist government, where they elected, to local government these multiracial these multiracial positions that were, working for the betterment of the people generally, certainly more so than the white elitist Democrats. And so the businessmen of the community, the white businessmen of the community, got together and said, this cannot be. We will need to overthrow this government and take over. And so it was a planned, very planned, strategic, and funded by the white elite, the white local elite, and also misinformation and disinformation was perpetuated through the newspapers at the time. And one of the main newspapers, owned by Josephus Daniels, he was one of the leaders of this coup. And so all of this, this was obviously before the internet, before television. All of this fear about Black people was spread through these news articles that there was a Negro takeover, Negro domination, that Black men are going to rape white women, all of this stuff. And we also mention this is at the time too, when we see the rise of, the continued rise of lynchings of Black people, often accused of some kind of sexual, misdeed with white women. So this was fear that was conjured up and, and spread around. And in November of 1890, and there was one Black newspaper led by Alex Manley who was, editorializing against these lies and misinformation. And he came out with published an article that said, these are lies. Black men are not raping white women. In fact, they oftentimes have consensual relationships, he being the product of at least an interracial relationship. And in fact, white men are raping our women, and no one talks about that. And that was the sort of ignition that lit the next 3 days, where in November, where the local government was overthrown. They brought in the troops, the shock troops, as one of our interviewees says, who terrorized the town. They're called the red shirts. Terrorized the town, terrorized Black people, and then forced the local government, local officials to resign, and instituted their own approved white supremacist candidates. And then drove Black people out of the city and their allies out of the city. And Wilmington went from majority Black to majority white. Jim Crow was instituted, and in 2 years later, and then it was covered up and buried for many, many years. And it was distorted in how it was, talked about, a race riot, talked about, Blacks started the violence. And we show in the film all of these articles that, and have readings of them as well from actors that, perpetuated these events and then covered it up. And in fact, Birth of a Nation, which, as we know, is sort of considered the first blockbuster and was, based on racist stereotypes, is a visualized version of the events, of a fictionalized version of the events in North Carolina. It was written by a Wilmington native. The book was, and made into a film. So
and it was screened in the White House. The first screening was in the White House for Birth of a Nation.
In the White House. Yeah, exactly. And the film American Coup we also bring in the voices of descendants of both the perpetrators
Mhm.
and the victims, and survivors, and so black and white. And that was a really important part of our process, to have these folks grapple with that history and to come to and to look at how that history is living now. So we have those participants as well. And the film is available. You can see it on YouTube. If you go to American Experience, Google American Experience, American Coup, it will come up on
And all your
YouTube.
other documentaries, right? Where can everybody find
And
all
my other documentaries, you can go to my website, promiselandfilm.com, and see where my other films live. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, so are you thinking about or maybe already planning to or maybe already doing it to cover aspects something around this administration? I'm just curious. Are you doing
Oh, no, no, that's a straight up no.
I mean, it
Not as
has
of
only
yet.
been 4
Yeah,
months, feeling like
exactly.
40 years right now, like, oh my god, every day.
Absolutely.
You know
Yes. But I
yeah,
will say that, PBS, which is where American Coup is on, and many of my other films as well. Promised Land, the one I mentioned about South Africa. I did a film about reparations. PBS, which is also on PBS. PBS is in real danger now, because the
oh,
many threats
yeah,
that the Republicans have been trying to do for years, they're enacting. And so I will just put in a shout out that please support uh, your PBS station, because
absolutely.
independent media, as you talked about in the beginning, is under real threat right now.
Yeah, NPR, PBS, then that's gonna affect the affiliates. It's gonna mean people are gonna have to be laid off. It's almost I mean, it's gonna force people too to go back to like the hardcore grassroots journalism and finding a other way to communicate. Because I think we're also all very aware, like these algorithms, Instagram, like the level of misinformation, but then, you know, we all I mean, I think it's gonna break eventually. It's just very difficult. Like I would have a difficult time because then I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? Because we also don't have newspapers, or it's like, but I do think it's really important that folks be media literate. And that includes documentaries and good movies and good media. That includes all the Pacifica stations, Free Speech TV, Real News Network. I wish everybody, all of them would get together. I mean, the fight for
Yeah,
PBS and NPR, but the other more left progressive, like I'm like, we should all be merging into something that can begin to hold these stories or have our own narratives as we know that things are happening. And even with this, we might not know exactly what's going on in certain communities until we see the video or until they already have the person in ICE or all these things. I mean, he said today he's going to send like 4,000 more to deputize other law enforcement to custom and borders control. And I'm like,
I
yeah, I
heard that.
mean, what do you? And he's like at the border. I'm like, and nobody crossing the border, dude. Like, I know, like, we should know what that means. He's trying to get all these
Absolutely.
military apparatuses all over. I mean, and we've seen the judge, and then we see what happened to Ras Baraka, who, by the way, was it today? Yeah, he was in court today. I know people shut up, but what did you think when you saw Ras? Just on like we're part of the loosely collective of New York, Jersey crew people that have always known Raz, his family. When you
And his
saw it,
father, yeah, absolutely.
you're like,
Yeah, and I actually listened to a bite of the New Jersey Democratic governor's race, and he talked about, and in fact, they all did, that he was not, in fact, trespassing at all. He had been invited in.
yeah,
So what we're seeing from the administration is, which we've seen in these other cases, is at the very least, to put it mildly, an overreach. Uh, and what they do, they try to say that he was the one causing a scene, and it was in fact them who were causing the scene
yeah. I
by
mean, that's
arresting him,
tactics.
them.
There's a new book out called Propaganda. right? Because also we're seeing it. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm seeing this from a lot of angles. It was a setup. That is, and then they get the call. I'm like, come on, y'all. And then, but for me, the flip side was like the sisters were like, oh hell no, like these two congressional black women,
Yeah,
180,
sure.
135, like hell no, surrounding him. But it did make me think like,
Yep.
this is what our ancestors had to do and our grandmothers, and like, you know, it was not only completely uncalled for and all that, but I also know why we're doing it. Like they're doing it. Like get the judges, get the elected officials, i.e., I really think people have to stop thinking that we're not in fascism because we're in it. The next level gets worse. And I think that's what he's trying to do with the military internally building up like that. But I just want to thank you so much. I really encourage everybody to watch it. It's a hard watch, and On the Record was a hard watch. Thank God now that I don't want to say reckoning of Me Too. What I want to say is thank God this came out, that maybe seeing this trial, because we've never seen a trial like this specifically around this with someone in hip hop of that stature. Um, you know, will hopefully make other people that go through this, because unfortunately, there are women right now that are being sexually assaulted, or they're being, they use, like Puffy did that with her. She didn't have a phone unless he knew about it. She didn't have an ATM card unless she knew about it. He was always like, she had to give him medical records every time. Like, I'm like, that's
Right.
complete psychotic control. And there are women in this country right now that are probably in that same situation. And I just think, again, like Cassie, to be 9 months pregnant and be so strong and have so much courage, that other women are also, I'm sure, strong and have that much courage and are ready to tell their truth too. So Yoruba Richen, I was going to say Academy, but Peabody Award winner, documentarian for the people. Thank you for
Thank
your
you,
work, and
Vanessa.
thank you for all of your work. And I really want everybody to watch it, because in these times, documentaries tell the truth. You just talk about Wilmington, Delaware. It might not be the same,
North
but it's
Carolina, Wilmington, North
oh,
Carolina.
sorry, North Carolina, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like they are afraid that there's way many of us before them, and we're seeing it in this administration, and what we're seeing in your documentary. It's like this keeps happening, but then also people resist. So I hope that everybody resists in any way that they can against what's going on in this country. So oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So again, Yoruba, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody who dropped in
Thank you.
comments. Yeah, go ahead, sis. I'm gonna close out the show.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sis. Appreciate you. Hey, everybody. Okay, I'll do it this way first. Hey, real quick. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah, I'll be back next week. Hey, thank you, everybody, for tuning into the show. I'll be back Wednesday next week on the next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And thank you to our sponsor, Cooperation Jackson. And I really hope that you all watch the video, the documentary series. I think it's important. And again, for all our brothers and sisters in Palestine, Palestinian, and in Gaza, I don't think there's been a people that's ever been that strong. So, don't forget that this is what's happening right now. The purposeful starvation of children is happening at this very moment in Gaza. Peace, everybody.